You started working on this 10 years ago, and as we all know, you got sidetracked with Sandman Overture, which even your publisher told you to go do ahead.
Yeah.
Um, did anything change in the process of that? Like, did that inform your creative decisions when you got back to Echolands?
No, I don't think so, because we had always intended to have Echolands be the next thing after Batwoman. And then, like you said, Overture came up. I don't think anything really changed in terms of how we're constructing it. It's just a ton of work ultimately, and I wasn't prepared for that. And then, like, life things happened to me during that time. Really, some of it catastrophic. I almost died 3 times. It took me a year, probably a year or so, to recover. I still have fallout from that with certain physical aspects of my life. Then we had the Vegas shooting occur. I live here in Vegas. So my wife and I ended up curating where we live. That took over a year of our lives. Then I had other weird little things, like I was contracted for Amazon to do an illustrated Bram Stoker's Dracula. So I had to do 50 illustrations for that. So there was like all these little other things that kept happening over the last 5 years that, maybe 4 years, that kind of kept coming into play. So it was like this, almost like it felt like a bit of a struggle, because we would start work, then something would happen. We would start work, then something would happen. And that kept going on and on and on. And it almost started to feel like, is this? And then with the work being so difficult, because it's like the world building process versus say Sandman or Batman or Batwoman or any of that stuff is quite different, because those things have a built-in iconography already that I can rely on. I can just like, oh, I know exactly what to do with that. Here's my take on it. Where with this, everything is from scratch. So that takes a lot of time and a lot of work. And then, like I was saying earlier, the landscape format from a work standpoint is way more challenging than I had anticipated. So the pages take me a long time to illustrate, more than I would like, but it is what it is.
Is that Dracula book out?
It is a digital version only for some reason. Amazon did this series of classics where they commissioned a bunch of different classics from various illustrators, where they did this thing where I don't know even what they call it, but they would take the pieces of art and add little animations to them. So as you're reading it, so like say if there is as an example, if there's a character holding a candle, the candle will flicker, or a little stream of steam or smoke come off of it. And so that's what that ended up being. I kept hoping that they would eventually do a print version, because I think it'd be super cool. And I treated the artwork in that like it was more inspired by Hammer horror films than the old black and white stuff. So I relied on a lot of color, because those Hammer horror films have so much color in them. So I thought it'd be kind of fun to approach it that way. That was a super fun project to do, and particularly because, like with Dracula, what isn't shown much in any film adaptations is how diverse his visual is in the book. He never appears the same way twice in the book. He constantly is morphing, and so that was kind of fun. Like every time I got to draw him, or paint him rather, it was a completely different idea of that, so it was super fun to do. I was really surprised they asked me to do it.
That's very cool. I hope they do print it one day. Getting back to Echolands, you say that Sandman, Batman, Batwoman, you had a built-in iconography. So is it more like Promethea?
Yes. Yeah. I'd say the work level is very similar to Promethea, where Promethea was very, very time consuming. The difference is I had, for the most of Promethea, I had an inker, where this is, I'm doing it all. And,
Yeah.
working in the writing seat as well. So the other difference between this and Promethea is a lot of Image comics. What's so fun about a lot of Image comics, a good chunk of them offer like interesting back matter materials per issue. And so we're doing that with this as well.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, so the back matter is very story relevant. So as what I mean by that, each chapter, as an example, each chapter has a snippet of an interview with the main villain that's done for a magazine called The Echo. And so you get little snippets and you learn a lot about the Echolands from that interview and a lot about what drives the villain. And there's like nice little clues and hints in there to the bigger picture of what's actually happening and how that might come into play with the main cast as they're trying to survive him. So
very cool. Is the villain somebody that we would recognize? Like,
no, I don't think so.
Okay, because I was gonna be like, can we actually do a whodunit with Echolands?
Oh no, the villain is when it'll be very obvious who the villain is and the people that work with him. He's a super interesting character, and his arc is going to be interesting too. Hopefully, people will be surprised what we end up doing with him, because at first he seems just a straight up evil dude. But then as you learn more about him, there's going to be a lot more depth to him than people think. So
you have, no pun intended, the dream team back on this one, Todd Klein and Dave Stewart.
Yeah.
How important was it to get these two guys? Because we're talking about the greatest letterer of all time.
That's right.
And
exactly.
And one of the greatest colorists of all time.
Yep.
Yeah.
It was of utmost importance to me. And it didn't seem like an odd choice at all, because we'd already been doing so much work together. I mean, Todd and I have been working together for the bulk of my career at this point. And he's always, what's so great about Todd isn't just how good of a letterer he is. It's how he approaches the lettering process. He's open to trying different things. So as an example of that, I mean, you can look at all the diversity of lettering he did on Promethea, but then when I did Desolation Jones shortly after Promethea, I was like, hey, can we try this with the lettering? Like a slightly different change, which brought a different flavor to the entire project. That when you make that kind of decision, it affects how everything feels. And he was completely open to that. And so just sticking to a standard. And we've done the same thing here. So the lettering style, which you've seen in the sample pages, is different than what a typical comic would be sitting next to it. And it's interesting that we've chosen to use squarish balloons rather than the ovals or round balloons. And it's interesting that we've chosen that because it's landscaped. So it almost feels like, oh yeah, of course you're going to choose rectangular balloons because you're doing a different page setup. So it's pretty cool.
Do you and Todd ever? So when I spoke to Mick Gray, he was basically saying how you were like a film director. You were calling all of the shots. You wanted to make sure that things look a certain way. But Todd is also known for, being very hands-on with design work and everything. You guys ever have creative conflicts about what would go into a particular design, like maybe the covers or anything?
No. Todd, he is very obviously respects my point of view as a designer, because I have to think about that so much with the pages. And if there's ever anything that I've thought about and kind of threw at him saying, hey, let's try this. If he's thought like, oh, that might not work, he'll be honest with me about that. But that's a very rare occasion. He usually tends to try to make it work the way I see it. The only thing I can think of is because he likes what I'm suggesting. In terms of balloon placements, I decide where all that goes, which is unusual. Usually a letterer or an editor will make those decisions, but I tend to control a lot of that because my pages are so orchestrated and constructed in a weird way that I have to think about that. And so I send him balloon placements, which he doesn't have any complaints about. If he sees something that doesn't work, he usually won't say, he won't ask me about it. He'll just make a change that he thinks does work and just send it and let me see it, and usually in those instances, he's right. So